Good morning, good afternoon and good evening. Welcome to this ACSFI event entitled Fostering Sustainable Wood Use in the Building Sector for Greener Cities, Lessons Learned from Wood Encouragement Policies. My name is Lyndall Bull, Forestry Officer at FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organisation of the United Nations, and part of the FAO Secretariat for the Advisory Committee on Sustainable Forest-Based Industries, or ACSFI. The ACSFI is co-organising this event with FAO's Forest Technical Network. The Advisory Committee consists of some 20 leading private sector experts from forest product associations, forest industry associations and pulp and paper associations who provide guidance to FAO on concepts, approaches and initiatives in the field of the sustainable production and consumption of forest products. It also provides a forum for dialogue between FAO and the private sector to identify strategic actions that promote sustainable forest management. These webinars have been a useful opportunity to both share our insights with you and learn further from both our speakers and you, our attendees. The Forest Technical Network brings together FAO colleagues based in headquarters here in Rome or in one of our regional, sub-regional or country offices who are interested in forest-related matters. It provides a platform to share experiences and discuss issues at stake like today. This is the third ACSFI webinar and I would like to warmly welcome all our ACSFI members, FAO colleagues and all other participants who have joined the webinar, some of whom we welcome back from previous webinars and some dialing in for the first time. Kindly note that this event will be recorded. The recording and all presentations will be made available on our website and we'll share the link with you in the chat. Please do share your comments, questions or suggestions by using the chat functions. If you wish to tweet, please use the hashtag ACSFI. Today's webinar is one in the series of events co-organised by the ACSFI. The next ACSFI event will take place in September, but will be just for our members as we're discussing the new ACSFI Strategic Framework 2020 to 2030. In October, we will organise a public webinar on the carbon storage and climate change mitigation potential of harvested wood products, uncertainties, opportunities and challenges. We'll send you notification for this as the time approaches. Today's event will be moderated by Mr Derek Nighbor, the Chief Executive of the Forest Products Association of Canada, or FPAC. He is also the Chair of the International Council of Forest and Paper Associations, the ICFPA, and a steering committee of the ACSFI. Derek will also introduce the excellent panel that we have for you today and present further information on the agenda. Derek, good morning to Canada, and you have the floor.
Thanks, Lyndall, and thanks everyone for joining us. I want to thank FAO and the team at ACSFI for pulling this together. Just a reminder, FAO doesn't have a formal policy when it comes to wood encouragement policies, but this is definitely an area that ACSFI and a number of our members from around the world have had increasing interest in this space, and we have asked FAO to do a little bit more work with us in sharing and learning from each other in terms of our experience in different markets. So I want to maybe just start by setting the stage for how we're going to run the program today. We have 4 speakers lined up. Each of them will have about 10 minutes maximum to speak. I'll be doing the timing here, and if anybody goes over, I am going to have to get the hook out because we do have a pretty tight agenda. As Lyndall mentioned, there is a chat feature, and that's where we'll be taking your questions from. We will be holding questions till all 4 speakers have had their opportunity to speak. So if you could put your questions in the chat, Lyndall and I will be tracking those, and then we'll have about 15 or 20 minutes for questions after Agnès speaks. Maybe just to set the stage for Pierre from FAO, who's our first speaker, I think all of us around the world are consumed by the COVID recovery and the opportunity to build back better. And I know in Canada, in terms of my day job at FPAC, our government is seized with this opportunity, as is our industry, We have a bit of a history in Canada of wood encouragement policies. Two of our larger provinces, the province of British Columbia and the province of Quebec, both have wood first or wood encouragement policies. Our federal government currently has legislation before our Senate, which is looking at government procurement and green procurement in terms of the use of wood. In recent months, we've had one of our largest cities, Vancouver, move to 12 stories in terms of tall timber buildings. The province of Alberta has done the same in recent weeks. So definitely a lot of momentum around the lower carbon, greener communities in this notion and want to build back better. So we thought the timing of the discussion is very much timely, and we have a few great speakers lined up. We're going to start with Pierre Bouillon, who is with FAO, and he's a forestry expert in forest-based bioeconomy. He's going to speak a bit about the ACSFI's background paper and the FAO work in this space. Pierre, by way of background, is a French national and has been with FAO since 2018. Previous extensive experience in the French government in the Ministry of Agriculture in food, and significant leadership experience in sustainable forest management and sustainable wood. So we'll start with Pierre. He'll have his 10 minutes, and then I'll move us to the next speaker. So Pierre, the floor is yours.
Thanks very much, Derek, for your introduction. So I'm going to share my screen. So indeed, among rising important topics identified in our dialogue with the ACSFI members, wood encouragement policies are considered as a strategic field deserving interest from FAO. And that's why we prepared this, as a first approach, this background paper on the status of public policies encouraging wood use in construction. And so among the goals of the FAO ACSFI is clearly written that the committee shall advise FAO Director General on FAO's program in the field of sustainable production and consumption of forest industry products and on consistent support on related policy work and regulatory matters. So we are clearly in the policy work, and wood encouragement policies were considered as a priority item by ACSFI members, in particular in this context of building back better after COVID-19 crisis, as highlighted by Derek. So why develop policies aiming at increased wood use in the construction sector? Because in many countries, regions, municipalities, the first construction choice is not necessarily made of wood, but of other materials. And for example, concrete. Building in concrete has advantages and drawbacks, but let's focus here on advantages of wood. And this is all the more relevant in our global demographic and urban context, as according to UN World Urbanization Prospects 2018, there will be 2.5 billion new city dwellers on Earth by 2050. And 90% of this increase will be in Asia and Africa. So something huge is at stake. And the question is, will these new city dwellers live in concrete and steel, or rather in wood-framed housing? So let's go back to a basic information. So wood is not abundant everywhere on Earth, but it's not rare on Earth. So FAO recently confirmed through the Forest Resource Assessment 2020 report that the Earth is covered with 4 billion hectares of forest. The renewable wood growing stock is of 557 billion cubic meters. Global wood harvest amounts at nearly 4 billion cubic meters, but only 51% is used as material, 49% as energy. And one message is that a lot can be achieved to reduce the 49% used in first and unique use as energy. For example, new wood value chains could be created, developed, and for example, sawn wood for construction, byproducts from sawn wood processed to produce pellets, more efficient use of wood in charcoal production could be enhanced. Wood as a material could be also be through investment in innovation, more efficiently processed into more and more performing products, likely to be recycled in many other products. So today, only 1/4 of global harvest is used to produce sawn wood, mainly for construction. So the message is that we can do more from less, or more from the same amount of wood. We have to stress major innovations that now allow high-rise wood frame buildings to be constructed. High technology engineered wood products of high strength to weight ratio can be used for off-site fabrication, leading to rapid erection of tall wood frame constructions made of prefabricated compounds assembled on site. This is a major innovation, and we consider that it may change the game for high-rise construction. So how can public policies encourage greater wood use in construction? So first of all, through promoting advantages of wood as building material, stressing that it is a renewable material produced with reduced environmental footprint, made of carbon removed from the atmosphere and substitutable for materials whose production is fossil carbon intensive. Wood has high mechanical properties. It is flexible and resilient in seismic areas. It has strong thermal insulation properties. We can stress that it is very effective in terms of fire safety as it charges slowly. It has high potential for off-site fabrication and quick building. And at end use, very interesting, wood compounds can be recycled. We can also stress through these wood encouragement policies, we can promote benefits of wood for inhabitants' well-being. So wood in housing generates well-being positive feelings. In urbanized context, humans feel that they keep in touch with nature. We can stress higher levels of well-being, concentration, learning, productivity, satisfaction, and reduced sick leave even. And wooden cities are said to have a warmer aesthetic. Important challenges to be addressed in wood encouragement public policies, of course, to update regulations and standards. It's very important to encourage training for wood sector companies, architects, and construction sector companies on wood use, to support research, development, innovation, to facilitate innovation use of wood in public buildings in order to achieve reference buildings. And we have to address also, policies may address harsh competition with other materials. Harsh competition because the contest may take place not only through communication and advertising, but also through press articles, political campaigns, even regulations may be sued to court. So competition may be quite difficult working at policy level. So a quick overview of diverse wood encouragement policies. They are very diverse and they can target both public and private sectors. We identified a small amount of these policies, but lessons learned may interest all countries with forest and wood resources. Whether they be developed at national, regional, local level, they will focus on specific goals such as promote the use of wood as building material. For example, we could see this in Canada and the provinces, Australia, Finland. They can support local forest industries like New Zealand, Germany, Wales, and create sustainable development in construction sector, like the Japan's Timber Manufacturing Improvement Plan. They can contribute to climate change mitigations, such as the Scotland's Climate Change Plan. And we like to stress here that there is a diversity in the formulation of goals, expected results, and indicators. When you are promoting the use of wood, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're promoting local forest industries. And when you're promoting sustainable construction, it does not necessarily mean that you're promoting wood use in construction. So the way the policy is phrased gives an accurate information on the policy priority. Then we can quote Swedish municipality of Växjö that implements a very impressive wood building strategy since 2005, where public land is sold to developers with mandatory requirements for wood-based construction. And the goal is that by 2020, this year, 50% of new buildings will have to be wood-based. So let's see at the end of the year if the target is reached. In Rotorua, New Zealand, it is advocated wood use from local forest industry. In Freiburg, Germany, there is a dedicated policy to wood use in the private sector that shall be locally sourced and sustainably certified. Let's, of course, quote Canada and British Columbia and municipalities that implement a Wood First Act since 2009. And we can add the Tall Wood Building Demonstration Initiative of Canada that supported 2 demonstration projects, including the 18-story wood frame Brock Commons in Vancouver, University of British Columbia. This tall wood house is home to over 400 students and hosting 400 beds, 34 bedroom suites, 270 studios. So that's a flagship construction, a very good example showcasing what is now possible to achieve in high-rise wood frame buildings. Let's quote also the Quebec's Wood Charter that makes it compulsory for municipalities to compare different scenarios with at least one using wood as main material and to rank the different projects according to their low carbon emissions balance sheets. And this is based on a standard methodology defined by the Provincial Wood Institute, SECOBOA. And in Australia spread wood encouragement policies at local government levels through the support of an environmental foundation, Planet Ark, and its Make It Wood campaign. And David will tell us more about this Make It Wood campaign. And in France launched a national competition for high-rise wood-based buildings at Bois with 13 sites. And the same, Agnès will tell us more in a few minutes about French Bois national competition. And in Germany, it's interesting to see that there is no unilaterally promotion of any specific building material, but promotion of wood as a climate and environmentally friendly resource through programs and projects, awareness raising, and provision of consumer information. So let's remind that WEP can create major stimulus to insert more wood and more carbon storage in greener cities. Flagship buildings have a ripple effect and contribute to policy objectives such as climate change, mitigation, and others. They can stimulate economic development of forest industries, encouraging rise of value-adding products, and they can improve people's education and awareness of benefits from wood in construction. Examples of communication in order to raise global awareness. Here are examples of efficient messages developed within the Collaborative Partnership on Forest Initiative Sustainable Wood for a Sustainable World. These are strong messages, efficient, and that can be widely released through wood encouragement policies. So at the conclusion, wood encouragement policies can create a major stimulus, and let's remind that wood is an abundant, renewable natural resource that can bring to mankind invaluable benefits when coming from sustainably managed forests or from circular economy, and moving from fossil resource-based urbanization to sustainable cities will be facilitated by increased use of sustainable wood in construction. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thanks, Pierre. I think that's a great introduction, setting some first principles in different frameworks around the world that are guiding some wood encouragement policies, some of the opportunities before us, and I think what we're seeing is really the global reach and some of the movement. So we're going to now move from some of the baselines and the fundamentals here to some of the actions, and I'm going to turn the floor over to Silvia Melegari, who's the Secretary General of the European Organisation of Sawmill Industries. Silvia has a great and diverse background, from political relations to European studies to competition law and to the promotion of wood. So she brings a broad-based experience. She's been in her role since 2015, based in Brussels, and is going to bring to us now a perspective from the EU in terms of some of these wood encouragement policies, opportunities, challenges, and just some perspectives. So Silvia, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much for the invitation to this meeting. I'm going to start my presentation. Indeed, I am the Secretary General of EOS, the European Organisation of the Sawmill Industry. I think you can already see my video. Can you see the presentation? I guess so.
Yeah, it's good, Silvia.
Okay, thank you. So these are the topics that I'm going to present. A brief market overview of the European sawmill industry, some point related to the raw material supply, and then I'm going to focus on the European policy and the input that they can give to the use of wood as a sustainable material, some consideration of what might be needed in the future, and I'm going to conclude with a brief presentation of our informative brochure for wood promotion. So here, as you can see on the screen, you have the data related of 2018 sawn softwood production that was increase of 2.56% compared than the previous year, and reached 81.7 million solid cubic meters. In 2019, the production was expected to reach 82.7 million solid cubic meter, while in 2020, before the COVID, the production was expecting to reduce 0.8. Now, after the COVID, of course, the situation has been changed. Now, for what it concerns the softwood producer, it seems that the industry can brace itself for a 10% production slump in 2020. And this is also partially because of our competitive cost of the euro material, and because the wood for outdoors has been very popular, and it has been partially a solution for the softwood sector to cope with the COVID implication. It's more complicated for the hardwood producer because they estimate a reduction of 20% in their turnover. And this is partially because the sector is linked to parquet and to the furniture industry, and both sectors are facing a slow recovering after the COVID. Looking at outside market, that are our main market for the European sawmill industry. The Chinese market is characterized by supply were higher than demand and stock levels that are still too high. This year, Germany is expecting to be the third most important supply country after Russia and Canada. Still, on the positive side, infrastructure in China are expected to keep demand high on the coming years. The Chinese housing market crashed in the first quarter of 2020 due to the COVID impact, but it began to recover in April 2020 and is continued to recover. USA, currently there is a lumber shortage in the USA, which is the result of production curtailment in Canada, logistic difficulties also caused by the COVID, and this has facilitated some export from the European softwood producer. Japan, since 2020, the Japanese softwood sawn timber imports have fallen by around 6 million cubic meters per year. And while volumes from EU remain constant, the US and Canada lost market share. In Q1 2020, overall, Japan imported particular glulam and CLT, and the import rose of 10% compared to the previous year. Finland and Austria are the main exporter for the EU. Now, this is an important topic that characterizes our discussion at European level. It is important to say that the European sawmill industry does not import raw material. All our material comes from European forest. So that is why the bark beetles and forest disturbances is of utmost importance for us. A third consecutive year of bark beetle infestation is expected to ravage the European forest, in particular spruce trees. Overall, between 2017 and 2019, it has been estimated that over 270 million cubic meters of standing timber in Central Europe has been damaged by a combination of factors. When we talk about Central Europe, we are talking about Germany, Czech Republic, and Austria. These wood country producers are also export-oriented. So what happened here affects also the entire timber market. 8 of the biggest timber industry are located in Central Europe. Just to make an example, Stora Enso has 4 sawmill plants in Central Europe. According to the estimation that has been published recently, the peak of bark beetle propagation is expecting to be reached between 2019 and 2021. That means that another 5 million cubic meters of damaged wood would accumulate in the coming 5 years. And what exactly mean? At the moment, we have an abundance of raw material on the market, but in the near future, we will have a shortage of quality of logs. This situation is even worse if we also consider the climate effect on the spruce forests that are expecting to decrease. So the raw material supply, it is a concern for the sawmill industry. Now, coming at what is happening here at the European level and creating a connection. So first of all, the new mandate of this commission is characterized by a green wave. It was mentioned before, by 2050, the world economy is expecting to quadruple. The global population is expecting to grow from 7 billion today to over 9.2 billion. And what does it mean? We will need more food, more industrial product, more energy, but also more housing. Establishing a resource efficient and climate friendly economy is central to the green growth, but also in this new recovery plan under discussion in these weeks by member states and the European Commission. The sawmill industry believes that the legally harvested wood product from sustainable forest management can play a key role in the green solution. Currently, two pieces of the European legislation are of importance for our sector. One is the Circular Economy Action Plan, and the second piece of the legislation is what is called the Green Wave Initiative that is expecting to be published in September. So the European forest and the forest-based sector provide integrated solution to the global climate challenge on a very large scale. There is a recent study published by the former leader of the FAO Global Forest Resource Assessment, Mr. Holmgren, who has estimated that overall the positive climate effect of the forest industry is 806 million tons of carbon dioxide equivalent annually. And this corresponds to a reduction of fossil emission in the European Union of 20%. But the contribution of wood product in a climate change as a perspective has been also already emphasized in the LULUCF National Accounting Plans published by several member states. Here I'm mentioning only Austria, Finland, and France. But many other countries has emphasized that increasing the use of domestic timber in construction and exploit the opportunity of the bioeconomy represent a solution for the climate change. Now, although it should be recalled that regulating construction works belongs to the competence of member states, and the EU legal framework for marketing of construction product is based on the principle of technological neutrality, meaning that at European level, we will never have a legislation that may say using wood should be preferred compared to other material. Nevertheless, Timmermans very recently presenting the Circular Economy Action Plan, he highlights the benefit of long-term carbon storage in wooden construction. And he emphasized that harvested wood product has a lower carbon footprint than most other construction material, particularly when they are sourced from sustainable managed forests. An initiative that is expected in 2023, but the works already started September this year by the expert of the European Commission in consultation with stakeholders, is the development of a regulatory framework for certification of carbon removals. This is a point that should not be underestimated because it will really create a favorable condition for using more wood product. I mentioned before the renovation wave. It's one of the pillars proposed by the Commission for recovery from this pandemic and for rebuild our economies in a different way, make them more resilient and make them more climate friendly. But the European Commission is not the only institution who has emphasized the role of wood product as a building friendly material. Even the European Parliament and the ITRE committee has called member states and commission to incentivize the use of natural and low carbon building materials during major building renovation and also building in construction. Still, the ITRE has reminded that sustainable building materials such as certified wood are essential for achieving low carbon and long-lasting building stock, and that construction opens an opportunity to store into bio-based building products in the limits of sustainable availability. 2 days ago, EEA, the European Environmental Agency, published a new report of the contribution of the construction sector in the circular economy. And in this report, it has been emphasized the positive role of wood-based product compared to other material in sustainable buildings and circular economy. So what we call for, what is important? As I said before, we have a concern about the raw material supply. We need to know how much wood our forest can supply to the industry, but to do this, we need to take in consideration also carbon disturbances. Not carbon, forest disturbances. Sorry. So we need a real-time European forest monitoring system who put together the information and also present a forecast about wood supply taking in consideration forest disturbances. We need to identify, if we want to promote wood in construction, all the technical market barriers that might lead on discrepancies in the use of construction product in member states, but also outside Europe. And last but not least, we need a more coherent promotion at European, but also international level for wood product. And we must put the emphasis on sustainable forest management. In these days, at European level, a lot of discussion concern the status of health of a forest. So we need to focus on the forest at the forest level. The European wood value chain has produced a brochure or booklet, Wood Building the Bioeconomy. This is a unique tool for explaining in an easy and intuitive way the role of wood product in the development of a circular bioeconomy. So you can find in this booklet all the information for about sustainable forest management, EUTR, life cycle comparison, and of course the role of wood product in decarbonizing the construction sector. If you want to receive a copy, you can send us an email, and it will be my pleasure to provide you with this brochure that we use in our advocacy meeting. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks, Silvia. I think a couple important points there. I think the forest health conversation and the beetle issue is critically important. I know in Canada, our recent State of Canada's Forest Report came out showing that actually 25 times the number of trees that we're sustainably harvesting are now being damaged by either fire or insects. And as we know, once the insects destroy, then the risk of fire becomes greater. So anyway, something to watch. And anyway, some great perspectives from the EU. We're now going to shift to the Southern Hemisphere. Although David Rowlinson's originally from the UK, he has been in Sydney for 25 years and is with the Planet Ark Foundation and leads the Make It Wood campaign. He's an architect and engineering background, and I love talking with the architects and the engineers on this topic because they truly are on the front lines in terms of dealing with the possibilities of building with wood. So David, I'll ask you to provide some perspectives on wood encouragement policies in Australia, and more specifically, you know, the Make It Wood campaign, some of the things that have worked and been effective, maybe some of the challenges you faced. Look forward to your presentation. David, over to you.
Derek, it's very kind of you, and it's wonderful to be with you tonight. G'day from Sydney. It's my great pleasure to be here. I just want to talk a little bit about the role that we've played in the development of wood encouragement policies throughout Australia. Planet Ark, as you can see, we're an environmental foundation, a not-for-profit organisation that was established in 1992. The organisation has become one of Australia's leading environmental behaviour change organisations, with a focus on working collaboratively and positively, probably the operative word in the slide there. We're both non-political and non-adversarial. And just to give you some background, a lifestyle research company called Mobium, they're a market research organisation based in Melbourne, do an annual research called LOHAS, Lifestyles of Health and Sustainability. It's a national qualitative survey to collect an extensive inventory of the values, attitudes and actions of adult Australians. They talked to over 2,500 respondents. And as you can see there, Planet Ark actually rated Australia's #1 trusted brand operating in a responsible, sustainable, environmentally friendly or ethical manner. And that was unprompted. And I think it's that trust issue that's probably the major issue at play. As Derek mentioned, the Make It Wood campaign aims to increase the use of responsibly sourced wood as a building material. And really the major objective is to provide trusted, credible, research-based advocacy and underpin the social license for the timber industry across Australia. The campaign is funded by our wonderful partners at Forest and Wood Products Australia, commonly known by the acronym FWPA. FWPA is a not-for-profit industry services company funded by the Australian government, member levies, and research grants. They're the driving force behind the world-leading Wood Solutions Programme and the Ultimate Renewable campaign last year. FWPA has partnered with Planet Ark to encourage the use of responsibly sourced wood as a building material to related industries, as well as Australian businesses and consumers. And as you can see, the campaign commenced 9 years ago in 2011. As I think we're all aware, a wood encouragement policy, certainly the way they're posited here in Australia, requires that responsibly sourced wood to be considered, where feasible, as the preferred material in all public new build and refurbishment projects. I think importantly, particularly from the perspective of councils and governments, wood use is not mandatory. I think it would be, well, it would be nigh impossible to get a mandatory requirement, because clearly wood doesn't work everywhere. It works in a lot of areas, but not in all. And so whilst wood use is not mandatory, councils are required to produce what's called a wood use declaration to show that wood has at least been considered in the development of a programme or of a building. And we can, Make It Wood can provide both a pro forma wood use declaration form and a pro forma wood encouragement policy, which I know has been used on many occasions by councils to develop their own policy. Here in Australia, we've got 3 levels of government. We've got our federal government based in Canberra. Then the next level of government is state. We have 6 states and 2 territories, and then local government. And as you can see, there are 537 councils across Australia. And of those, about 60 to 70% are regional or rural councils. The largest council in Australia, which we're actually talking to at the moment, is Brisbane. They have over 1 million ratepayers, and some of the small ones will probably have of the order of 10,000. So the size and nature of councils varies quite dramatically from one location to another. And I guess the key benefit that we talk about, and when we're saying we think this would be a good thing for a council to do, of course, the first one is demonstrated environmental leadership. We believe it's a good way for them to show active implementation of a sustainable building policy. The reduced greenhouse gas emissions that wood obviously provides. And a number of councils now are developing zero net carbon emissions plans. And obviously with the significant reduction in embodied carbon that wood could provide in buildings, timber can play a big part in that. Improved energy efficiency, as was touched on earlier. And certainly in a lot of the more regional and rural areas, support for economic activity and jobs in the local timber industry. We, of course, particularly with the advent of engineered timber and off-site prefabrication, talk about the faster construction of buildings and consequent reduction in the cost of construction. And more recently, one of the major messages that we talk widely about are the increased health and well-being and increased productivity benefits that timber and biophilic design creates. And certainly one of the things that we haven't necessarily done before, but I think post-COVID-19 has been this whole notion of building back better together and informed, I think can play a big part in that as well. I've had many meetings over the last 4.5 years with a number of councils and governments, and probably the major concerns, these are only not mentioned all the time, I would say, I don't want it, but probably the main ones that I hear would be, not in any particular order, the durability and the potential for ongoing maintenance costs, the fire and flammability issues with respect to timber buildings, the potential impact on deforestation. Probably the biggest one, I think, certainly in a lot of parts of Australia, is simply inertia, the resistance to change. We've built buildings with concrete and steel for 100 years. Why should we do anything different? And also another potential issue is the availability of product, particularly engineered or mass timber products like CLT, glulam and LVL. And the key players that we typically talk to, and it varies from one region to another. Although I do understand that hopefully I should be able to talk to the Lord Mayor of Brisbane in the next short while. So the Mayor, the CEO, procurement officers, design and planning departments, environmental and sustainability managers, they all potentially have a part to play. And I think the important aspect there is that no two councils are the same. So there's no generic one-fits-all approach that necessarily works every time. You just have to sort of work with the council and work with the staff in their particular area. There are a number of ways that we've promoted the increased use and the adoption of wood encouragement policies over the last 4 or 5 years. One of the major ones is there's a National General Assembly for the Australian Local Government Association that takes place in Canberra in June every year. And the photograph you can see there is me presenting to about just over 500 mayors and CEOs of councils across Australia. I was quite lucky in that instance because I presented immediately before the federal leader of the opposition, a guy by the name of Bill Shorten at the time. And so he was a bit of a draw card, and so the audience was there, I suspect largely to listen to him, but they got to listen to me as well. So it was a great opportunity for us to promote the benefits of wood encouragement. There is a magazine called Local Government Focus that goes to all councils across Australia, and we regularly place adverts and run editorial in both print and online editions of that. I've done a lot of in-house presentations and briefing meetings, often in collaboration with industry, and I think in many ways this is when it works best. And some examples of that would be the Forest Products Commission over in Perth in Western Australia, Timber Queensland, Sustainable Timber Tasmania, and the Green Triangle Forest Industry Hub, to name but a few. And again, I think one recommendation would be to, if you can, get an environmental foundation working together with the industry. Seems to work extremely well. We have a website, the Make It Wood website, and there is a section all about wood encouragement policies on there with a map, a pro forma policy that I touched on earlier, and there's a video which features some of the projects that have arisen as a result of Make It Wood, of wood encouragement policies. And finally, we've produced a fact sheet which can be distributed as a PDF. So those are just some of the communications tools that we've used with councils and governments across Australia to help the industry and work with the industry to promote the use of wood encouragement policies. And that is a map of the current policies across Australia. As you can see, there are a total of 22. There are 2 local government authorities that you can see on the top right-hand side. There are 2 states, namely Tasmania in the south and WA, Western Australia in the west, which is by far the biggest state in Australia. So they've both implemented what we call statewide wood encouragement policies, and other state governments are certainly in the early stages of discussions about adding to that. And in addition, there are 16 local councils that have adopted wood encouragement policies all over Australia, in all states, as you can see, apart from Northern Territory and Australian Capital Territory. So those are that's the success so far, and there are certainly a number of conversations which are ongoing, and hopefully we'll be able to significantly add to that. To the better of my knowledge, that one policy over in Rotorua is the only one that exists in New Zealand. So whilst Australia haven't been able to win a Bledisloe Cup on the rugby field in the last 17 years, we're probably succeeding marginally more on the implementation of wood encouragement policies. And finally, just a couple of examples that I thought I'd share with you. I could have done a lot more, but these are just two examples of wood encouragement policies in action. The first, as you can see, is the Latrobe Regional Gallery over in Victoria in Gippsland, which is to the east of Melbourne, probably about 2 hours to the east of Melbourne. And as you can see, a lovely quote, the Latrobe Regional Gallery is a great example of our wood encouragement policy in action. It's a major cultural centre for the east of Victoria. Latrobe City is now seen as the progressive cultural leader for Gippsland and beyond. And a lot of that comes down to obviously the building and particularly the use of timber within it. And that's a great quote from the Mayor, Dale Harriman, as you can see. And the last one is Dardanup Shire Council. Now Dardanup is a small town, very small town, about 2 hours south of Perth in Western Australia. So the building you can see in a town the size of Dardanup is a big building. That would be a big issue. And as you can see, there's a lovely quote there from Mick Bennett, the Shire President. Dardanup Shire Council in Australia, Western Australia, formalised its wood encouragement policy in December 2016, and it's now poised to bring it to life with the development of a new multi-million-dollar 3-storey Shire administration and library project. And as I can't emphasise enough the significance that a building like that would have in a town like Dardanup. So it really is a great example when it's completed of a wood encouragement policy in action. So that's the presentation, but I guess the overall takeout, I suspect, I think it's been a great idea on the part of FWPA to partner with an environmental organisation. I believe it works well. Of course, I'm biased because I'm actively involved in it, but hopefully it's a model that other countries and jurisdictions might look to implement as time progresses. So thank you very much. I hope that was of enjoyment for you.
It was. Thanks, David. Sorry about the rugby. I'm sure the Kiwis are okay with that, but good to see your engagement and the advances you've made with the Make It Wood campaign. I want to address one of the comments in the chat around EU and WTO rules are material neutral, and that's something we understand and accept. I think, as David said, we've been building with other materials for 100 years, and I know the perspective we've taken in Canada on this is people need to think about wood more. And when you're playing from behind, when you have that 100-year disadvantage, you need to work a bit harder to reach out to architects, engineers, governments, communities to let them know about the innovations that have happened in wood and the power of wood and the green benefits of building with wood. So I think it's really, really important that although we all accept the material neutral position and the outcomes need to be performance-based, that wood is prepared to perform and is performing very well in the markets, and we're seeing that. I know in Canada, the response to that from some of the competing material groups, especially in the cement sector, has been to try to spread misinformation and stoke fear about wood. I know our perspective has always been that there's a place for all materials, and we should stick to the facts and to performance-based. So just wanted to acknowledge that comment and say we agree with you, and that's the spirit of the conversation today. Before I turn to Agnès, I also wanted to mention we've seen already 3 great presentations. Those presentations, along with the draft document that Pierre referenced, will be available along with the recorded webinar later on, so all participants will be notified of that. So versus needing to take photos of every slide, know that these presentations will be available to you. So thanks again, David, for that. I'm going to switch gears, and we're going to now go to an architect in the Northern Hemisphere, Agnès Lauret-Grémillet, who's with the French Ministry for Agriculture and Food and has been in that role in the forest and wood sector for since 2018. As I said, she's an architect by trade and is an expert in wood uses and climate change mitigation, wood as a construction material and as an energy source. She has some great public-private sector experience, and I thought I'd maybe turn it over to Agnès now to give us a French perspective on this matter. Agnès, over to you.
Thank you very much, Derek, for your presentation. And now I'm going to share my screen. That's it. And thank you very much also, Lyndall, Pierre, and Sven for the organization of this webinar. I can't pass my slides. I don't know why. Ah, that's it. Sorry. And the first point, I wanted to present you the French public action in favor of timber construction, which is carried out in a complementary way by several ministries. The Ministry of Agriculture and Food essentially acts on the upstream part of the forest wood sector, as in charge of sustainable management of forest resources and of primary processing of wood. In order to develop French wood sector, this ministry also acts to boost final demand in wood products in close interface with other administrations. Indeed, the Ministry of Ecological and Social Transition and the Ministry of Territorial Cohesion share downstream issues on sustainable city, building regulations, and low environmental impact constructions. In addition, the Ministry of Economy and Finance has a transsectorial economic action. Here are the latest framework documents toward lumber products. Upstream, the Ministry of Agriculture is driving the National Forest and Wood Programme. It deals with 10-year targets to ensure forest renewal with climate change, to address economic and social expectations, and facilitate creation of new end markets. The Ministry of Ecological Transition leads low carbon and energy targets. However, the Ministry of Agriculture is also contributing to carbon sequestration in forests and carbon storage plus substitution in wood products. Regarding the energy sector, the importance of biomass heat is reaffirmed. The Energy Transition and Green Growth Act targets the construction sector and a future environmental regulation for new buildings. Historically, the building sector in France is based on large companies highly specialized in concrete. French groups now rank among the leading European builders, but for a few years, these leaders integrate wood skills and create timber construction subsidiaries. However, 100% wood constructions are still limited and achieved by a majority of small companies. But a growing trend is the increasing use of wood in mixed construction solutions. Another point is that most European construction standards are based on softwoods, while French forests are mainly wooded with hardwood. The valorization of this resource for lumber products is the only way for France to reach national carbon neutrality objective by 2050. So we have to work on standards. The first level of the strategy is an interministerial action plan for forests and timber. Public real estate developers are targeted. The most active one is Epamarne in eastern Paris. This developer builds 1,000 housing units a year with wood and currently experiences structural hardwood. Epamarne also encourages private constructions with wood on its territory, but the competitiveness of French primary processing still needs to be improved with bigger companies using digital technology. A strategic plan for the industrial wood sector targets the entire value chain from foresters and sawmillers to downstream manufacturers of secondary wood products and furniture to carpenters and wood engineers. At interprofessional level, wood plans produce very practical technical tools and advice for decision makers. This is part of the synthesis produced on these tools for broad communication. French builders often try complex or unsuitable timber designs requiring technical derogations and additional insurance costs. Building owners also need all the parameters for the correct programming of wooden buildings. And finally, future architects and engineers must be trained in timber construction at an early stage. French products made of wood harvested and processed in the territory are also promoted here by a recent brand. This is a structuring project of the strategic supply chain contract. After a global market study, wood industries have targeted promising markets. Two groups were targeted in particular: luxury for French excellence reputation and health for wood environment benefits for elderly or sick people. Even with commercial and scientific arguments in favor of wood industry, how to convince, for example, hospital directors? What are their criteria and priorities? High-rise buildings have also been targeted as a potential to be developed. In France, timber construction is mainly associated with single-family homes. The French state took an initiative and launched a major national competition to prove that wood has a structural place in multi-story buildings. Beyond technical performance, there was also a symbolic message. Wood must gain height. And this new visibility convinced construction sector leaders to participate to this new challenge. The prize-winning projects are mostly made of French wood. In addition, there are also some 60 partner projects. The ADIFO Association was created to steer this initiative through technical working groups. The distribution of projects throughout the territory is a strong point for message dissemination. All regions are concerned, even with low wood construction tradition. These projects brought many technical lessons learned. For example, the prefabrication of wood products must be scrupulously respected on the building side, with its strict controls of interfaces between companies. Concerning fire regulation, ADIFO buildings have enabled the creation of the new medium height category. This avoids excessive constraints between 28 meter and 50 meter height. It was noticed that timber companies shouldn't be subcontractors, but co-contractors, or even take the lead to better defend their interests and best uses of wood. In order to limit insurance costs and deadlines, builders must also better know and respect approved wood techniques without derogations. These projects have boosted French production of cross-laminated timber, CLT, which was previously almost non-existent. The 2024 Summer Olympic Games in Paris are another structuring project. The ambitious greenhouse gas reduction plan was a major asset for the selection of the French bid. French Wood 2024 Association was created to promote wood use in Paris 2024 constructions. ADIFO experience was useful to reach this new stage of international showcase. The Builders Program required wooden structure for less than 28 meter high buildings and recommended wood frame facades beyond this height. Of course, there is currently a huge battle with the French concrete industry to keep this course. The monitoring of this goal is included in the state's legacy program, as these constructions will be reconverted after the Games. Of course, the Olympic constructions also concern sports equipment. We can see here that wood is also very present both outdoors and indoors with a large span roof structure. The southwest of France has large forests and wood industries. As national strategies can be reinforced at regional level, the new Aquitaine region is very committed to develop its wood sector in partnership with the state. The FCBA Technical Center for Forestry and Wood thus organized from its unit in Bordeaux the first International Wood Rise Congress for high-rise wood buildings. The second Congress took place in Quebec in 2019. The third is expected in Japan in 2021. So don't hesitate to suggest your country to apply for hosting the fourth session in 2023. A national reflection currently prepares the future environmental regulation on new buildings. It stems from a European directive requiring new buildings to be near zero energy from 2020 onwards. It's a major challenge in France because from the enforcement of this regulation, the carbon impact of materials will also enter the balance sheet. An important point deals with the method used to take into account the carbon storage of wood products over the life of the building. The level required on this indicator will also be fundamental to boost or not the wood industry. Standardization is also a big issue for the use of wood in constructions. Current standards only indicate the carbon storage of wood for information purposes, but do not include it in the environmental footprint of the product. The carbon is only temporarily stored in the wood after demolition of the building and, if possible, recycling. This carbon will be released one day through combustion or decomposition, but not considering it at all in the environmental footprint is too reductive and doesn't encourage timber construction. Standardization calendar presents two opportunities of evolution on this subject. First, the environmental declaration of wood products will be revised. And second, the specific building regulation about European marking of products is also being revised. It seems important to seize these opportunities. In conclusion, here are some winning projects for the last National Timber Construction Trophies, variety of programs and styles, a beautiful and rich diversity for future generations. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thanks, Agnès. And when we were preparing for this, Agnès had shared her concern that her English might be not great, and I thought it was excellent, Agnès. Thanks for your presentation and for all your work in contributing today. I'd like to remind folks that the chat feature is open, so we have a few questions ready to go here, but I would like to hear from people who are on the call if you have any specific questions. So Lyndall and I will be monitoring the chat window. Maybe Silvia, I'll go back to you, and you talked quite clearly about some of the most urgent priority areas in the EU. What are you seeing on the ground in terms of the technical market barriers that are really holding you back? What would you view to be the top one or two barriers that are holding progress back in the EU? There.
As I mentioned before, honestly, at European level, we do not have a clear assessment of what are all the barriers in timber construction. Nevertheless, one of the most concern that is raising right now, it has been after the Grenfell Tower, so is a fire resistance of wood product. Now, if you are familiar with the development of the UK legislation, basically no combustible materials will be permitted on external walls of any new buildings taller than 80 meters. And this ban also applies for renovation of existing buildings. So this is really a technical barrier for wood product, because as many researchers have actually identified, wood products have excellent resistance to fire. And when they break in a predictable way, and that also represents really a key element compared than other materials. Now, I do not have the technical competence to really explain the difference between a wood product rather than other material, but this is probably the biggest concern that we are facing. Very correct what also the French representative has highlighted, the carbon storage of wood product. This is a missing opportunity for our sector, and it should be included in the standardization. So these are the two main aspects that I think are important to be emphasized. And then of course we are facing also a perception problem. This is not really technical, but it's still something that affects the use of timber in construction. And last but not least, we also lack of skills, people who are competent in building with wood and that they want to engage in building more with wood.
Thanks, Silvia. David, I wanted to pick up on the perceptions piece. I think those of us who've been in the industry for a while, you know, we're almost sometimes too close to this. And I even see in Canada that some of the most basic facts, even in Canada, a country that was built on forestry, people are blown away that we plant 600 million seedlings every year. Can you maybe talk from an Australian perspective about maybe what are the messages, or, you know, some of the most simple messages that have been the most effective, or other, you know, maybe big takeaways in terms of the program's execution?
I can. In fact, your question is very timely. This time last year, our partner organisation, FWPA, and their Wood Solutions Band produced a marketing campaign called Wood, the Ultimate Renewable. Because I think, well, we do regular consumer tracking research, which shows that the community largely understands that wood stores carbon and that using wood can help reduce carbon emissions, and we can see an increase in the awareness of that. But we needed also to improve people's understanding that harvested trees are actually replaced and grow into a resource for use by future generations, because our market research showed that there was still a lack of awareness of that. So there was a TV and print and social media campaign, as I say, happening pretty much exactly this time last year, which actually reached a quarter of all Australians and showed quite a significant increase in the awareness that wood is actually a renewable resource, just like solar power. And in fact, the campaign recently won 2 what's called Gold Quill Awards in marketing, advertising and brand communication category. So it's great that the timber industry, which by comparison to concrete and steel is extremely small. One of the steel companies in Australia is one of the top 20 companies. So we're against large, very strong opposition, but to get such recognition for that message, I think shows that it can be achieved. And overcoming these perceptions is a key part of that, that we were delighted to participate in.
That's excellent. David, I think we were all seized by the fires in Australia, and I know Ross Hampton, our counterpart at the Australian Forest Products Association, we were in close contact with him. Coming out of that, any impacts of that in terms of perceptions on either supporting the local forest industry and forest workers, or the fear of fire, or any notable outcomes linked to the fires in Australia?
It's probably a little bit too early to tell. That's one thing. And the other thing I would say is that coming rapidly on the heels of it is, of course, COVID-19, which has changed the dynamics of everything, well, everywhere in the world. Because as you'd appreciate, in Australia, we had a significant drought, then we had floods, then the bushfires, then we had floods, and then we've had COVID-19. So apart from that, life's been pretty rosy. But in terms of perceptions, as again, I've not seen any sort of documented evidence. I think there's probably a degree of sympathy for the bushfires. Just to put it into perspective, the bushfires burned an area about half the size of the UK in total. So significant volumes of both native forest and plantation. And mercifully, some of that can be harvested and used, but it needs to be done fairly quickly. And so I think, again, I don't have any sort of scientific basis for this because I haven't seen anything specifically, but there's probably more empathy and sympathy rather than I told you so, we shouldn't be using wood. But it's possibly a little bit too early to be saying. And again, the impact of COVID-19 and the housing downturn potentially as a result of that's probably a bigger aspect at this stage, I would say.
Thanks, David. Sticking with the theme, Agnès, I'm thinking about perceptions, and I know in Canada and around the world, getting architects and engineers and construction businesses on board with building with wood is so critical. Can you talk maybe a little bit about some of the barriers in France, or maybe some of the things that are working? Because clearly there have been some really positive buildings and developments in France.
I think for designers, there's clearly a big issue of training in wood construction, but it's important to do it very early in the first years of studies, because if not, architects will always think in concrete construction, and in fact they will try to translate it in wood when they draw their project. Otherwise, we will continue to have many technical errors and extra costs. And we need nice but cheap wood construction to reach the next step and be competitive in a European market. And we cannot mass produce only with the production of wood activists. And concerning construction companies, if they have new markets to win, they will organize themselves to reach them.
Okay. Thank you. Pierre, so you've been doing a lot of work in terms of that background document that you led off with, and as I said, that document will be available in draft to participants. I know one of the things, some of the questions, as we build more, some people are wondering, are we going to run out of trees? I know that's a question we get from time to time. Can you speak a bit in terms of your perspective on how you would answer that question?
Yes, thanks, Derek. So there is a big item in this field, a big communication explanation item. So the biggest worry is the fear for deforestation, and we have to explain that there is a confusion between wood harvest and deforestation, and that harvesting wood is not changing the status of a place as a forest. It's just a moment in forest life. And of course, what would be the interest of the forest and wood sector in deforestation? Of course, there is absolutely no interest in forest and wood sector in deforestation. Forest industries need to use sustainable wood from sustainable forest management to meet consumer expectations, and of course to have long-lasting activities. I would also stress that it is well known now that the biggest driver for deforestation is agriculture and land use change for agriculture, and perhaps 80% of cases around the world. And we could stress that there is a risk for forest degradation in case of non-sustainable practices. And this can be tackled by promoting sustainable forest management and promoting the fact that when we harvest wood, we replace wood either by plantation or natural regeneration. And to be part of this sustainable nature cycle is very important to bring sustainable wood to meet our sustainable needs. And I would also stress that wood encouragement policies can strongly contribute. So stressing that, of course, wood harvest cannot exceed wood annual increment. And through efficient use of wood, we can develop more sustainable wood circular bioeconomy. We can improve the way we can get more from the wood we use, and we can improve our wood value chains, and really can bring more to the populations with better use of wood. And through innovation, we can find new uses, performing uses, only using wood available without a decrease in the wood growing stock on Earth. And of course, last point, we can improve the productivity of tree and wood production, because among the 60,000 tree species on Earth, there are a huge potential in breeding and in silviculture, and a lot can be done in that field also.
Great, thanks, Pierre. And thank you for your work in advancing the conversation in terms of the engagement on the document and the webinar today. Really appreciate it. So I want to acknowledge, before I turn it over to my colleague and friend Jane Maloney from South Africa to wrap this up, I want to acknowledge Olman's comment on tropical wood and some of the technical trade barriers around tropical wood. We'll make sure that's noted for the follow-ups, Olman, so thank you for putting that in the chat. So I want to just now, as Lyndall mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, I'm privileged to be in the second year of my 2-year term as president of the International Council of Forest and Paper Associations. And I followed in some pretty big footsteps in Jane Maloney from South Africa, who is the executive director of the Paper Manufacturers Association of South Africa. You meet a lot of great people in forestry, and Jane is one of my favorites, and I'm really happy she's here today to provide a little bit of a wrap up, and then she'll do a little bit of a summary and then turn it over to Lyndall. So Jane, over to you.
Thanks very much, Derek. It's quite ironic that I've been asked to wrap this session up, because in the rest of the world, the developed world, I believe that up to 70% of housing is timber frame, but in South Africa, it's only 1%. So it's exciting to have this opportunity. Looking at what we've heard today, we've heard some exciting things. We've heard about that wood solutions are green solutions, that they have very low fossil carbon footprint. From Pierre, we heard about the thermic and acoustic advantages, efficiency in construction, and unfortunately across the world, if you don't have a market that is driven by sustainable solutions, then policies definitely actually make a difference. So it was exciting to hear from David, where Australia has definitely embraced wood encouragement policies. And I love the fact that the councils actually have to have a wood use declaration. So they have to have considered whether or not wood is the best solution. And where it is, they should definitely choose it, which is great. Sylvia, the realities of COVID, quite scary that your sawmilling organization, that sawmilling in Central Europe will see a 10% reduction on softwood and 20% on hardwood. Of course, one of the positives that's coming out of COVID is exactly this campaign that the UN and FAO are driving, Build Back Better. And that's where your wood encouragement policies are just so important. Derek picked up on your insects, and that's one of the big objections in South Africa. They're convinced that your building will be white-anted and eaten to bits if you build a home with wood. But I have to mention there that we have a very good forest and agricultural biotechnology institute called FABI, and we have cross-country interaction on dealing with bugs and beetles and pests and diseases, and things like the shot borer, which we've seen lately. So what we need to see more of, and I believe that although the FAO doesn't have a policy, they don't actually have a position on wood encouragement policies, the recent Sustainable Wood for Sustainable World interventions that they've had and conversations that they've had throughout the world, and we had one in South Africa, has led to a wood promotion in a way, and it links to the whole value chain, the wood value chain, and how important that is. Again, on the chat that I think it was Silvia, where she talked about the European Commission, and I think, let's just see if I've got you exactly, said that the Commission has adopted a new circular economy action plan, which highlights the benefits of long-term carbon storage in wood construction, and that harvested wood products have a lower carbon footprint, and that the European Commission is going to explore the development of a regulatory framework for certification of carbon removals. That's pretty exciting. In South Africa, we managed to get the S for sequestration into our carbon tax equation. And we are busy looking at methodologies for accounting for the carbon that is stored in wood. Then who else? Oh, Agnès, we had the wonderful pictures that you shared as well, and the competition. Years back in 2015, the International Council for Forest Products Association that works closely with the ACSFI had a treehouse competition, and we had over 200 applications. Unfortunately, I don't think that any of those reference buildings were actually built. So how do we actually incentivize that we have greater use of and accelerate of wood in cities, and particularly in Asia and Africa, where I think it was Pierre that said there's 2.5 billion city dwellers. That's what we're going to be looking at. I think getting the information, the right information across is very, very important. I think we need to develop a wood-friendly construction regulatory environment. We need to implement proactive public strategies for sustainable development. We need to incentivize economic development of forest and the wood sector, and we need to have public procurement action to encourage wood use in construction. It's incredible that cross-laminated timber structures can be 5 times lighter than a reinforced concrete structure, with an equivalent span and suitable for medium and for high-level constructions, and yet we still see concrete being preferred. So let's hope that in a post-COVID society, we have a greener environment and we all build back better. One of my personal exciting ideas would be, all over the world, we are busy re-looking at our country. I know I need to ask my friend Julie. I always ask her, what does it mean? What is nationally determined commitments that we are making for COP, that we will be making for COP? We're all looking at it. And that's where at the Paris Accord, trees were given huge priority, but we need to link it to the value chain. So thanks so much, all of the speakers, for your great contributions today. And thank you to the FAO for the contribution that they have made in having this platform for us.
Great, well done. Thanks, Jane. Appreciate that. Lyndall, we'll turn it over to you. We have 2 minutes left, so just enough time to do a wrap. And you're on mute, Lyndall.
Some people might like that. Thanks, Derek. First of all, a most sincere thank you to all our fabulous speakers today. I'm certainly really excited by the range of speakers that we've brought to you today, but also over our previous webinars, and then, you know, seeing the list of people dialing in from around the world, the conversations we're having, the information we're disseminating and sharing. I think it's fantastic for progressing some of the ideas that Jane just did a great job of wrapping up on. So our most sincere thank you from here at FAO. And thank you to our ACSFI members, and particularly our steering committee, and Derek and Jane for your contributions today. That's about it from me. As I said, we will share with you the link for when we post the recording and the presentation and the draft background documents to the website. And we will continue to share with you as as the ACSFI continues to deliver these webinars. So With that, I'll say good night and good morning and good afternoon to you all, and yeah, look forward to staying in touch. Thanks, everybody.
Great. Thanks, Lyndall.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.